A teacher challenged God in class. What Jesus revealed to him will transform your faith forever. Mark stood at the front of his classroom, an anchor in a storm of adolescent chaos. The students squirmed in their seats, their youthful faces a blend of curiosity and rebellion. They were unaware that their teacher, usually so composed and resolute, was grappling with a tempest all his own. A former soldier, he had locked away his fears for years, until now. As he paced the room, a single question brewed within him, potent and dangerous. If God is all good, how can he allow suffering? The words hung in the air, electrifying the atmosphere. He watched numerous expressions flicker across the students' faces, some puzzled, others intrigued, a few sparked with indignation. His heart raced, a guilty thrill coursing through him. He felt like a reckless magician who had just pulled a rabbit from a hat, only to find it was a snake. "What do you think?" he called out, pushing the debate forward like a swift current. His own voice trembled slightly, betraying the gravity he felt. The heat of the discussion enveloped the room, but within him stirred a darker current, an unease mingled with determination. How was he supposed to inspire hope when he doubted the very beliefs he taught? The students began to argue passionately, revealing shards of their own struggles, economic hardships, family crises, an aching sense of hopelessness. Each voice seemed to echo Mark's own internal turmoil. He marveled, could faith really sustain them through such pain, or was it just a comforting illusion? "Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening," he blurted out, desperate for a moment to catch his breath. "YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen." Now let's continue. As their faces returned to him, Mark felt a wave of frustration crash over him. They discussed faith and suffering with an innocence he feared was a facade, a dangerous delusion. Inside, he battled feelings of inadequacy. He was supposed to guide them, but how could he steer their lives when he barely held on to his own compass? Late into the night, as he unpacked boxes from his deceased grandfather's attic, Mark stumbled upon an old journal. The pages were filled with his grandfather's eloquent reflections, layers of faith unfurling during times of despair. Each line resonated deeply, begging him to wrestle with acceptance, yet the more he read, the more conflicted he became. Mark's doubts became spiraling whispers in his mind, each entry exposing the rift between his grandfather's beliefs and the social injustices he witnessed. In the world around him, he felt like a vessel filled with uncertainty, the vessel threatening to shatter. The debate in his classroom intensified, and he found himself on the edge, caught between shaping his students and losing his sense of purpose. At home, he practiced conversations around the dinner table, wanting to infuse his children with authenticity. But they, too, wrestled with their thoughts, crafting arguments that echoed his own inner conflict. Each exchange tightened the grasp of anxiety around his chest. Just when Mark thought he could come to terms with this discontent, a heart-wrenching tragedy struck his town. A student lost, leaving the community gasping in shock. As he stood amidst the grieving faces, an unsettling realization dawned. The questions of faith, suffering, and truth had just solidified. Mark felt a fracture within him, a profound itch for answers, yet faced with the ground-shaking choice of whether to embrace the chaos or succumb to silence. Fear clamped down, leaving him at a precipice, faced with an undefined future. Could he rise to inspire his students to confront their suffering, or would his own fear ensnare him, inhibiting the very change he longed for? The pull of transformation loomed, waiting for his next move. Mark couldn't shake the feeling of being unevenly balanced, as if one side of him was weighted down by the unresolved pain of his students, and the other lightened by the flickering hope of finding clarity. The chaos of the previous debate lingered in his mind, blending with the vivid images of the grieving faces outside. He understood that he was standing at the crossroads, fierce questions demanding to be answered. How could he guide his students when he felt lost within himself? The next morning, a heavy fog draped over the town, mirroring his mental state as he made his way to school. His heart pounded, but this time there was an urgency, a call to confront his uneasiness. He clenched his hands around the steering wheel, quieting the whispers of fear, focusing instead on one thought. He had to be the vessel of change. Arriving at the school, he noticed the usual buzz was muted, students moving through the halls like shadows. Their loss etched itself into the atmosphere. As he entered the classroom, he hesitated for a moment, recalling the debate's intensity. He needed to approach today differently. "We're going to talk about resilience," he announced, trying to control the tremor in his voice, "and how we find light in darkness." Some students eyed him warily, yet a few nodded with muted acceptance. Tension hung thick as they settled in. Mark felt the pulse of uncertainty deep within him as he stood before them. "Resilience isn't just about bouncing back," he said, easing into the discussion. "It's about acknowledging the pain first." He recognized a fire igniting within him, a burgeoning authority seizing the moment, pushing through his own doubt. "Let's talk about what it means to be human, to struggle, and to search for meaning in the midst of suffering." As they opened up, the room morphed into a sacred space where hearts laid bare. They shared their fears, hopes, and experiences of loss. Some spoke of the student who had died, while others shared personal stories of heartbreak. Mark listened intently, noting it wasn't just pain they brought forward. It was resilience budding beneath the surface, the very essence of survival that intrigued him most. In one student's voice, trembling yet fierce, he heard the echo of raw truth that connected him deeper to them. The girl spoke about how she'd lost several family members, but chose to honor their memories by helping those in her community. Each word was a brush that painted vibrant strokes against his muted canvas of grief. Feeling a warm rush through his veins, he recognized the catalyst for his own change. The stories they shared were markers on the path toward hope. Perhaps his grandfather's journal had held answers, not just for him, but for the students he was meant to serve. He felt empowered by their collective strength. After class, he lingered in his empty classroom, reflecting on their dialogue like a seasoned soldier processing vital intel. He scribbled notes on resilience, formulating plans to incorporate their voices into his lessons. The idea electrified him, an opportunity to turn their struggles into something constructive, a weekly forum on confronting their demons. Yet, as a determined resolve took root in him, the looming fear of failure still clawed at his consciousness. Was he equipped to lead them through that darkness without succumbing to his own? The gnawing doubt remained, unrelenting. As the day ended, Mark glanced back at the empty desks and felt a flicker of defiance rise within him. He remembered the grief they shared could not be ignored, but perhaps it didn't have to define them either. A quiet rebellion against despair began to simmer in his mind, a call to action. The question now beckoned, urging him forward. How to navigate this new path he envisioned, while keeping the darkness from closing in? With his heart racing, he dared to confront his greatest fear. Was he ready to face the world head-on, both his uncertainties and the truths that lay ahead? The moment of realization loomed over him, a silent promise that no matter the outcome, he would rise for them, or crumble under the weight of his own doubts. Would he have the courage to embrace this journey of transformation? The gray mist that enveloped the following morning felt thick enough to touch. It was inescapable, albeit comforting. Mark found himself in a peculiar state, wrestling with a newfound determination that began to solidify within him. No longer did he just wish to guide his students through their sorrow. He was ready to embark on a journey to discover his own path to healing. Driven by the previous day's revelations, he prepared for their upcoming forum on resilience with a palpable sense of urgency. As he sat on the edge of his desk, he envisioned the space, students exchanging stories, peeling back layers of grief, and pooling together their collective strength. A part of him questioned if he was truly capable of steering such a conversation, yet another part, perhaps the louder one, knew it was essential. When the time came, he stood before them again, this time armed with a sense of purpose. "Today, we're stepping into our collective vulnerability," he instructed, his voice bare of fear. "Let's speak to our pain directly. Let's invite it to share the space with us." A few familiar faces echoed surprise, but they sat up straighter, curiosity igniting a spark. Mark felt the tension fade, replaced by an electric energy swirling in the room. He encouraged discussion, guiding them gently as they shared raw, intimate tales, moments that both broke them and rebuilt them. Mark grasped the weight of their experiences and recognized the profound exchange that was filling the air. Through one poignant account after another, he began to understand something transformative. This wasn't solely about guiding them, but engaging in the very same struggle himself. Each story revealed layers of his own as he confronted reflective surfaces of resilience. There was the homeless man he met as a student, who taught him the value of survival against the worst odds. Every tale they offered held a mirror to Mark, showing him how intertwined their narratives truly were. Suddenly, in the spring of acceptance, a bold thought took root in him. Maybe, he mused aloud, what we create here today can become a foundation, a lifeline for our community. What if we hosted sessions outside this classroom? The room ignited with questioning murmurs. Some students apprehensively nodded, while others hesitated, gauging the depth of the proposal. Mark's heart raced. He was not simply fantasizing. He was laying down a challenge for them all. Yet, as expressions of disbelief and intrigue floated about, an unexpected voice cut through. "And what if it doesn't work, Mr. Adler?" A familiar, sharp tone, laced with skepticism. It was Kevin, fixated intently on him, arms crossed defiantly. Mark's stomach dropped. The sharpness of that question echoed his private fears. The very doubt he hoped to dispel surfaced with brutal clarity. What if he failed? What if their pain was too profound to transform? In that moment, he realized Kevin's question encapsulated the heart of their collective journey. There was no escaping the risk involved in change. Failure might loom close, but it was in the attempt to rise above that transformation lay. "Then we will learn together," Mark replied firmly, reclaiming control. "Growth often sprouts from failure. But if we are brave enough to try, if we find the courage to face our fears together, we extend our reach beyond the walls of this classroom." A flicker of something stirred in Kevin's expression, perhaps even hope. Mark felt an exhilarating pulse at that moment, the prospect of pushing boundaries and embracing the eternal uncertainty of human experience. As the bell rang, chaos erupted momentarily. Books were hastily gathered, chairs scraped back. But Mark remained, lingering over the cascade of emotions swirling around him. The excitement bubbled along with lingering trepidation. The path ahead felt charged yet unclear. He would need to gather the courage not only to lead them forward, but to examine his own festering doubts. With his hands resting on the desk, he caught a glimpse of his future path. A winding, treacherous road where discovery awaited. Could he truly harness his uncertainties to empower himself and his students? The question echoed within him, resonating with a mixture of terror and exhilaration. Mark realized that the journey was just beginning. And as he closed his eyes, a sense of gravity enveloped him. Would this commitment to authenticity and vulnerability become his guiding light, or cast him into an abyss of dread? The next few days were a whirlwind for Mark, filled with sleepless nights punctuated by thoughts of the upcoming forum. Each night, his mind raced with anticipation and self-doubt. While preparing his lessons, he feverishly scribbled down potential exercises, probing the contours of their collective experiences. However, the uncertainty of whether he'd truly reach his students loomed like a cloud over him. As he walked to class that Wednesday, the chill in the air sharpened his focus. He was astonished by the stillness of the streets, an echo of his own inner turmoil. The world seemed to hold its breath, waiting for a moment of revelation. He recognized the gravity of what he was attempting, and a flicker of fear ignited along with that recognition. Was he leading or simply projecting his own insecurities? When he arrived, the room buzzed with an energy he hadn't anticipated. Students were talking amongst themselves, a mixture of anxiety and excitement palpable in the air. Mark took a moment to still his thoughts and adopt the calm demeanor he aspired to project. As he approached the front of the room, the chatter dissipated into silence, and he felt every pair of eyes drawn to him, glued by the very desire to confront their doubts. "Welcome back," he started, with a steadiness he didn't fully feel. "Last week, we took the first steps into our vulnerability. Today, let's dig even deeper and explore resilience through confrontation, confronting our challenges, but also confronting ourselves." Kevin's voice rang out across the room once more. "And how do we know it's worth it? What if this is just another exercise that doesn't change anything?" The old familiar knot tightened in Mark's stomach. Doubt was creeping in again, but he paused, recalling the weight of their previous discussions. Every effort we make has the potential to change our dynamics, even if the outcome isn't what we envisioned. Allowing ourselves to examine our fears is a step towards transformation. If we tread into uncertainty, we may uncover insights that redefine us. As he spoke, he felt a flicker of courage sparking within him, but it was marred by the realization of how easily he could falter. He knew each brave statement served not only to bolster his students, but also to build his own foundation amidst uncertainty. He facilitated a new exercise where students had to write a letter to their fears. The act of giving a voice to their hesitations proved illuminating. As letters were read aloud, the room blossomed. Threads of shared vulnerability emerged, pulling students closer instead of further apart. Mark interjected gently, guiding them to reflect on those fears and consider how to navigate through them. Moments later, a student named Ella opened up about her struggle with failure, while another, Jordan, recounted the burden of expectation. Their confessions hung heavy in the air, laced with a thread of authenticity that pulled at Mark's heart. He recognized the potential for transformation, not just for them, but for him too. With every story, the evening's tension shifted. He began to realize that their successes might not be solely defined by blanket achievements, but by the gradual progress made in confronting their inner dialogues. What if each shared experience, each fragment of pain, led to collective healing? Mark let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. In their revelations, he found strength and empathy growing within him, a newfound clarity amid the chaos of emotions swirling around. He was learning to mold his doubts into a source of empowerment. There would be stumbles on this road of discovery, but perhaps the struggle itself was the key to unlocking deeper understanding. As the session came to a close, he couldn't help but feel a sense of unity in their disparate fears. His heart swelled with a tender hope. Could he truly harness this experience, not only for his students, but for himself as well? Just then, as they packed up, an unexpected knock on the door shattered the moment. In walked the principal, a stern look plastered on her face. "Mark, we need to talk." Instinctively, he felt the walls closing in, uncertainty replacing the camaraderie forged just moments before. What did she want? A confrontation loomed on the horizon, and he braced for impact. Would it crush their fledgling bonds, or challenge him to rise once more? Mark's breath caught in his throat as the principal's gaze fixed on him like a spotlight, illuminating every trace of uncertainty he felt marinating within. There was an intensity in her presence that sparked a sense of impending conflict, drawing a line between his aspirations and her expectations. "Do you have a moment?" Her tone was clipped and businesslike, but he could sense an underlying urgency, a call to confrontational dialogue that he hadn't anticipated. "I was observing your class today." "Of course," he managed, his voice steadier than he felt. He gestured toward the door, unable to shake the feeling that he was being led into a situation that might unravel everything he had built. They stepped into the hallway, where the echo of chatter faded into a... He glanced around, half expecting to see his students watching closely, ready to witness the fallout. "I'm pleased with what you're trying to do here, Mark. It's bold, and I admire that," she began, her eyes narrowing slightly. "But we also need to consider our curriculum and the standards we're upholding. Are you certain these methods align with our educational goals?" The question wasn't just scrutinizing his lesson plans, it felt like an indictment of his entire approach to teaching. A swell of resentment bubbled within him, but he curbed it, focusing instead on how to express his beliefs articulately. "I believe they do," he replied, composing his thoughts. "Engaging with students on an emotional level fosters critical thinking. Life isn't just about achievements on paper, it's about understanding the self and the world around us." "Emotion can be disruptive, Mark," she interjected, her voice tinged with authority. "While participation is important, we cannot afford to veer too far from established content. Our mission is to prepare these students for their futures." Mark's mind raced. To him, the essence of education transcended mere academic performance. It was a journey of personal growth. But what if preparing them for their futures includes helping them navigate their emotions and fears? Isn't it essential they learn to confront adversity? "Such methods could be risky," she cautioned, tilting her head as if measuring his resolve. "Where does this leave our academic integrity? We can't allow emotional exploration to undermine scholarly achievement." He hesitated, feeling the weight of her words settle uncomfortably. Did he need to defend his approach, or could he use this moment to articulate how he felt changed, how he had witnessed change unfold before him just hours ago? "Respectfully, I think we can integrate emotional intelligence into academic success," Mark responded, a newfound determination coursing through him. "These students need a safe space to unravel their fears, just as much as they need intellectual rigor. What if this exercise empowers them to overcome personal obstacles, which could, in turn, enhance their academic experience?" The principal regarded him, surprise briefly flickering in her eyes. In that moment, Mark recognized the tension between their competing visions for learning. "Perhaps," she conceded wearily, "but I want to see tangible results, a qualitative assessment. Share your students' progress, how they respond to this kind of engagement. If we can demonstrate its value, I can advocate for a broader approach." A rush of adrenaline surged through Mark, transforming the daunting conversation into an unexpected opportunity. "I can do that. In fact, I will do that," he affirmed, feeling a fierce sense of purpose ignite within him. "Good. Let's talk again in a few weeks," she said, her expression softening ever so slightly. "I genuinely want to support what you're doing. Just be mindful of the stakes." As she walked away, Mark leaned against the wall, a mixture of challenge and exhilaration washing over him. Confrontation had birthed clarity. The conversation revealed where his boundaries lay and ignited a quest to find measurable impacts from the emotional exploration he'd initiated. He had a chance to turn doubt into evidence of growth, not only in his students, but for himself as an educator. As the echo of their discussion faded, his heartbeat quickened with possibility. What if he could truly gather tangible evidence of their evolution? How would that influence his next steps, and what resistance might he face from within the school? With purpose, he returned to the classroom, poised to engage his students once more. The stakes had been elevated, but so had his resolve. This time, he silently vowed he would document their growth and transformations. As he met their expectant gazes, the door remained ajar, a reminder of the ongoing struggle ahead. Would he manage to balance both emotion and academic integrity? The challenge was only just beginning. Mark stood before his class, the room buzzing with youthful energy that only moments ago had felt so promising. Now, the weight of his conversation with the principal bore heavily upon him. He could hear her words ringing in his mind. Tangible results, qualitative assessments, a challenge to not just teach, but to prove that his methods mattered. "Okay, everyone, let's settle down," he said, trying to project confidence as he caught the eye of each student in the classroom. They were eager for engagement, their youthful faces mirroring a variety of emotions, ranging from curiosity to a hint of apprehension. "Today, I want to try something a little different," he began. "We're going to explore our feelings about the story we read last week. Remember the themes of struggle and transformation? I'd like us to talk about how those relate to our own lives." The students exchanged glances, uncertainty flickering among them. They were used to exams, essays, and structured discussions, but this was uncharted territory. He sensed some were keen, while others were unsure of what had been asked of them. Mark decided to dive in. "Let's start with a simple question. What challenges have you faced recently, and how did you react?" Silence fell over the room like a heavy curtain. He could feel hesitation radiating from the group. Was this too much? Would they resist this emotional exploration, exactly as the principal predicted? But then a hand shot up. It was Sarah, a bright and often shy student. "Well, I just got my report card and I didn't do well in math. I feel like I'm failing." Encouraged by her vulnerability, Mark nodded, prompting the others to engage. "Thanks for sharing, Sarah. Feeling like a failure is something we can all relate to at times." One by one, the students began to open up. The conversation flowed, with stories unfolding around struggles with grades, family expectations, and personal insecurity. As they spoke, Mark noted the shift. He felt the atmosphere transform. Their walls of resistance began to crumble. This wasn't just about academic performance, it was about genuine connection. Yet, he realized that in fostering such openness, he also walked a delicate line. Would the principal see this once he gathered the data? Would she appreciate the depth and connection forged here, something that was not easily measurable but profoundly significant? After the discussion, Mark instructed them to write their thoughts in a journal for the next class. "Reflect on how these experiences have shaped your understanding. I'll be collecting these for feedback, so be honest." The bell rang, signaling the end of class, and he felt a mixture of exhilaration and trepidation. As the students filed out, a few lingered, lingering traces of their conversations visibly enriching the air. "Mr. Firestone, that was different," one of the students remarked. "It felt kinda good to talk about stuff." Mark couldn't help but smile at their unexpected responses. Perhaps this was working after all, but was he prepared to defend it? Would subjective experiences hold weight against the cold logic of academic assessment? As new plans began to form in his mind, he reflected on how to monitor their growth effectively. The data he needed to present to the principal needed to be grounded in their new emotional engagement. He recognized that without careful planning, he might lose this traction. Sitting at his desk, he put pen to paper. He would need to devise a system to quantify the intangible. But in doing so, he faced a broader realization. If he could find a way to measure this emotional growth, could he also extract lessons that might apply to his own life? What obstacles had he too carried that he needed to confront? As he wrestled with these questions, an overarching sense loomed in his thoughts. The task ahead was not merely an academic exercise, but one that could fundamentally alter his approach to teaching and perhaps even his understanding of himself. The next moments of clarity dictated an urgency within him. If he was to transform this classroom, he needed to confront not just the challenges faced by his students, but his own hidden fears as well. With a growing sense of purpose, he turned to research ways to integrate emotional metrics into his lesson plans. Meanwhile, whispers of doubt stirred within him as he faced the principal again soon. Would he be prepared to defend his methods, or would he prove to be as doomed as those students who feared their grades? His resolve intensified as clarity emerged. He had a path to walk, one that could reshape not only the narrative of his career, but reshape how he viewed education itself. Mark took a deep breath, ready to embrace the challenges ahead. The struggle was beginning, revealing lessons about growth that extended beyond the classroom. Would he discover the courage to face his own limitations? Mark awoke the next morning with an unsettling sense of purpose. The previous day's discussions still reverberated in his mind, stirring a mixture of optimism and fear. He had stepped into an untested realm of teaching, advocating for emotional exploration among his students. However, the reality soon began to settle in. He had to reflect this newfound approach in measurable ways that would impress the principal. Each action he contemplated felt like walking a tightrope. Would his methods create lasting change, or would they crumble under scrutiny? He glanced at his reflection in the bathroom mirror, meticulously scrutinizing the doubts flickering across his mind. The same young face he had seen for years stared back at him, but now it felt charged with a sense of accountability. Arriving at school, Mark felt a tingle of anxiety as he navigated the corridors. The conversations he had sparked echoed in his ears, his heart racing with the possibilities they hinted at. As he stepped into his classroom, the scent of chalk dust and the familiarity of desks standing resolute filled him with determination. Today's goal was clear: to gather data to complement the emotional intelligence he had embraced. He went straight to work, crafting a survey that would allow him to measure the connection between emotional engagement and academic performance. What did they really feel after their discussions? Did it enhance their understanding of literature? Would they be willing to share their reflections openly? As he feverishly wrote questions, "Describe a moment you felt proud of yourself," he wondered if he would be able to ignite the same kind of transformation within himself. The students would surely respond with enthusiasm, but how could he ensure they were honest? Fearful of judgment, would they hold back, only writing what they thought he wanted to hear? Mark decided to lead by example. He would open up to them, share a story of his own vulnerability, a time when he had felt lost or inadequate. If he dared to force down his own walls, perhaps they would feel empowered to do the same. "Okay, class," he began, as the bell rang once more. "Today I'm going to share something personal with you." He stood tall, steadying his breath as he recounted a time from his own youth when academic pressures had almost overwhelmed him. "I thought I wasn't good enough," he told them, "but it was during that struggle that I learned resilience." Intrigued, the students leaned in. Something shifted, the connection deepened. When he finished, Mark met their gazes, searching for encouragement. They nodded, visibly moved. His vulnerabilities dismantled any remaining barriers. One by one, students began sharing their own stories of struggle and fear. Mark felt a sense of relief wash over him. He was no longer just the authority figure, he was a collaborator in their emotional growth. He gathered their reflections in real time, each word building a bridge between their experiences, a network of shared understanding. But even with a charged room full of inspired thoughts, he still felt the nagging ache of inadequacy. What if he couldn't effectively measure this? The thought hung in the air like a storm cloud. After class, exuberance mingled with apprehension as Mark sifted through their journals. The candidness of their writing filled him with awe, yet how would he quantify their emotional insights? He needed more concrete data. That evening, he delved into research, seeking strategies from educational psychologists, analyzing frameworks that quantified emotional intelligence. The deeper he dove, the more connections he found between emotional expression and cognitive development. However, within that excitement, another realization emerged. He was grappling with his own emotional landscape. Beyond the classroom walls, he was forced to confront his fractured self-image, an aspect he had neglected for far too long. As he wrestled with these thoughts, Mark closed his laptop, feeling the weight of his personal and professional life bearing down on him. Living with intention required confronting fears, both in his students and himself. Suddenly, he was struck with clarity. If he was to encourage his students to navigate their own emotional struggles, he needed to face his. the insecurity that loomed over him like a shadow every time he confronted the principal. The next moment crystallized his resolve. He would expose not only the emotional growth of his students, but also the foundational connection it had to his growth as an educator. That was the real evidence. But could he present this idea with the conviction it deserved? Mark leaned back in his chair, gathering himself. The path he had chosen was uncertain, but it was his. It promised transformation, not solely for his students, but for him as well. As he prepared for the challenges ahead, a message from the principal flashed on his phone. The meeting was scheduled for tomorrow. The moment had arrived to reveal his findings. Would he possess the strength to convey the profound significance of emotional engagement, or would the fear of rejection silence his voice for good? Mark spent a restless night, tossing between excitement and dread. The thought of the meeting with the principal loomed large in his mind, a relentless drumbeat that echoed through his thoughts. He had sketched out the framework of his presentation, yet the fear of inadequacy wrapped around him like an old familiar blanket. What if his ideas were dismissed as impractical? What if the value of emotional engagement was overlooked? The weight of those questions consumed him. The morning arrived filled with gray clouds, and as Mark walked into the school, the atmosphere felt dense and charged with impending judgment. Every friendly smile from colleagues felt insincere, or perhaps he just projected his own insecurities onto them. He just had to make it to the meeting without spiraling into panic. Trying to calm his nervous energy, Mark retreated to his classroom for a momentary refuge. As he glanced at the papers piled high on his desk, filled with heartfelt reflections from his students, a flicker of resolve surfaced. Each entry was a testament to their growth, a glimpse into their struggles and victories. But even these words, powerful in their emotional resonance, felt insufficient without a framework to showcase them to the principal. In an attempt to solidify his resolve, thoughts, he wrote down 2 questions on the whiteboard. What is emotional intelligence, and why does it matter? Mark recognized he needed clarity for himself before he could be clear with others. The silent room filled with the hum of his nervous mind as he paced back and forth. He realized that emotional intelligence went beyond academic results. It possessed the potential to shape character and resilience. His students were not just statistics or future test takers. They were human beings, yearning for expression and connection. In defending his methodology, he would need to appeal to something more innate and profound. Mark's pulse quickened as inspiration surged. He envisioned how he could demonstrate the connection between emotional engagement and academic performance through narratives, weaving together the anecdotal threads he had gathered. He would opt not to isolate raw data, but to present real stories that evoked empathy and understanding. With newfound urgency, he picked up the phone and called a colleague, an experienced educator whom he respected. "Can we run through some ideas? I need perspective," he admitted. There was a tinge of vulnerability in his voice that hadn't been there before, signaling his readiness to seek support. After a brief, enlightening conversation, Mark moved with purpose. He reframed his presentation, adding a personal touch, showcasing his own journey alongside those of his students. If he could open their eyes to the benefits of emotional exploration, they might also reflect on his resolve to uphold this path. The day dragged on, his heart racing as the clock ticked closer to the meeting. He could hear his own internal dialogue building. What if they react negatively? What if this backfires? Yet swirling beneath was another voice growing stronger. This was about more than validation. It was about inspiring change. As he approached the principal's office, the realism of what was to come settled in. He held his notes tightly, feeling the crinkles of paper beneath his fingers, an anchor amidst the swirling storm of uncertainty. Today was not just about presenting, it was about declaring his commitment to fostering an enriching environment for both himself and his students. Before he entered, he took a deep breath and closed his eyes for a moment, embracing the fear blooming inside him, acknowledging it as a sign of growth. He envisioned a path not just for students to succeed academically, but for them to flourish emotionally. And in doing so, he would transform not just their lives, but his own. The door opened before him, revealing the principal seated, poised, and expectant. Mark stepped inside, ready to face the moment that could redefine both his career and how he engaged with not just his students, but himself. But just as he began speaking, an unexpected interruption rattled both of them. A voice in the hallway carrying an urgent message that would shift everything he believed about his journey as an educator and the lesson he was about to deliver. The unexpected voice echoed with urgency, slicing the carefully constructed atmosphere in the principal's office. Mark froze mid-sentence, the words he had rehearsed evaporating in the wake of this intrusion. His instincts flared to life as the principal's brow furrowed in concern. "Let's see what that's about," the principal said, rising from her chair. Mark felt an unsettling grip of apprehension coupled with curiosity as the door swung open. He stole a glance at the principal's face, searching for cues, for indication of what could possibly rattle their discussions. Answering that call to adventure, Mark felt a tug toward anticipation and dread. Moments later, the principal returned, her expression transformed from one of concern to one of quiet resolve. "We have a situation in the cafeteria," she began, pausing for effect. "A student has taken ill, and we need to maintain calm while we address this. I need your help." Mark's heart raced as the wave of responsibility crashed over him. This wasn't just about teaching. It was a chance to support a student in crisis. His mind raced with fear. Was the child okay? What could he do? Yet amid the turmoil, clarity emerged. Perhaps this incident was entwined with the very ethos he wanted to share. "Of course," he found himself saying, propelled by a sense of duty. The principal led him swiftly down the hall, their footsteps echoing with urgency. As they approached the cafeteria, Mark sensed something pivotal was unfolding. This was not merely an interruption to his presentation. It was a chance for him to demonstrate the emotional insight he championed. The cafeteria loomed ahead, filled with a mass of students, laughter and chatter fading into a hushed wave of murmurs as they realized something was amiss. In the center of that chaos, Mark spotted the outline of a familiar face crumpled against a table. His pulse quickened as he recognized Jessica, a student who had struggled with her own emotional battles throughout the year. Without thinking, he pushed through the gathering crowd, the noise receding into a muted hum. Mark's instincts focused like a laser on Jessica, who appeared pale and trembling. He crouched beside her, feeling the sharp pang of concern. "Hey, Jessica," he said softly. "I'm here. Can you tell me what's wrong?" Her eyes darted around, brimming with unshed tears. I just felt overwhelmed," she stammered. "Everyone was too much. I didn't know how to breathe." A revelation struck Mark with the clarity of a lightning bolt. This was the moment he could invoke the very principles he had intended to present. He wasn't just teaching concepts, he was living them. "It's okay to feel overwhelmed," he told her, genuine warmth infusing his words. "Let's take a deep breath together." Around them, tension pulsed. Mark focused on modeling emotional engagement as he guided Jessica through breathing exercises, connecting with her in a moment that transcended the confines of traditional education. Students watched with rapt attention, their whispers quietened as they witnessed compassion in action. Though anxiety simmered just beneath surface, Mark felt empowered, aware that this was more than just a response to an emergency. It was a testament to his belief in emotional intelligence. He turned back to the gathering students, their curiosity shifting to understanding. "We all have moments when it feels like too much. It's okay to express it, to ask for help." As he spoke, he recognized the opportunity to inspire. His narrative could transform the fear stifling his voice into a rally cry for emotional awareness. There was a shift occurring, not just in Jessica, but in the students around them, and within himself. With Jessica's breathing steadying, he knew he had chosen the right path. As she glanced up at him, a flicker of gratitude shone through her fragile demeanor. He realized this moment reinforced not only his professional resolve, but illuminated something deeply personal. The true essence of teaching lay in these connections. Energized, Mark suddenly recalled the principal, standing a few steps back, watching intently. "Thank you for trusting me, Jessica," he said, emotion tinged in his voice. "Let's step out of this noise together." The eye of the storm had passed, but Mark felt a new tempest brewing within him, a quest for deeper understanding, a battle against the restraints of conventional education. As they moved to quieter ground, he instinctively knew he had to share this experience with his colleagues, perhaps reframe the context of his presentation through this living example. Walking beside Jessica, each step took him further away from self-doubt and closer to leadership that embraced vulnerability. The adventure was only just beginning, and as they emerged into the hallway, he realized any doubt of himself needed to dissipate. The lesson had shifted, but the stakes elevated. Mark sensed a challenge ahead: how to translate this raw experience into his teaching philosophy, a means to reshape his approach and the conversation with his principal. As they stepped through the doors, a new voice echoed from the back of his mind. It was unmistakably clear. The real test would come when he had to distill this chaotic moment into pure inspiration for others to embrace. What would the principal think of this heartfelt display? What reaction lurked just beneath the surface of their evolving dynamic? Mark took a deep breath, ready to face the next step of his journey. The days that followed the incident in the cafeteria proved to be pivotal for Mark. The unexpected crisis with Jessica transformed not only the student's understanding of emotional awareness, but also ignited a notable shift within him. That experience crystallized his commitment to redefining his classroom as a space where vulnerability was acknowledged, celebrated, and transformed into resilience. As he navigated through the regularities of school life, his excitement grew. He meticulously documented feedback from both students and parents, capturing their reactions to the newfound emotional explorations in his classroom. Each entry became fuel for his fire. He realized that he wasn't merely gathering data, he was building a compendium of human insight. Experiences. The path from grief to strength, from fear to courage, flowed beautifully through their shared stories, stories now interwoven with his own struggles and triumphs. In a moment of bold inspiration, Mark decided to compile these insights into a presentation tailored for the upcoming meeting with the principal. He wrote and rewrote, eager to reflect the heartfelt narratives and demonstrate the powerful connections forged through emotional engagement. The morning felt electric as he headed to the meeting, his presentation ready not just to defend, but to advocate for a revolution in how education perceived emotional intelligence. Upon arrival, a weight settled in the pit of his stomach. The principal's office was filled with familiar intensity. As he sat across from her, he felt the rush of earlier vulnerabilities slowly transform into a steady confidence. His heart raced as he started the presentation, weaving together Jessica's story with those of his other students, highlighting the intersections of emotional growth and academic performance. "Each reflection serves as evidence," he stated with fervor, standing a little taller. "The emotional resilience we're cultivating not only enhances their academic abilities, but also reshapes their identities. They're learning to confront fears and articulate them, making room for authentic growth in all areas of their lives." The principal listened intently, her expression shifting as he detailed the impact of emotional exploration on their academic performance. He presented data from their reflections, culminating in a consensus that this was not merely an experiment, but a living framework enhancing holistic education. Taking a breath, he boldly added, "If we embrace this concept, we'll not only prepare students for academics, we'll equip them for life. Isn't that our ultimate goal?" As silence hung in the air, he felt the tension begin to shift. The principal leaned back thoughtfully, her expression no longer stern, but contemplative. "Mark, you've put forth compelling points," she said cautiously, scanning the various pieces of paper scattered across the table. "While I appreciate this perspective, we will need to discuss measurable outcomes further." Mark felt a flicker of apprehension, but the vision of what he was advocating for kept him steady. "I'm committed to collaborating on this. Let's develop a plan that includes qualitative assessments of emotional engagement alongside academic outcomes," he proposed. "Let's explore that possibility," she replied, nodding slowly. "I believe there's merit here. We just need to ensure we have a structure." As Mark left the meeting, he felt an overwhelming wave of exhilaration wash over him. His fears had been confronted and transformed into collaborative dialogue, affirming that education could indeed go beyond traditional boundaries without sacrificing integrity. The following weeks unfolded with energetic momentum as Mark implemented more interactive discussions and reflections within his classroom. The students dove deeper into their emotional experiences, unlocking resilience and community bonds he had never witnessed before. He introduced weekly circles where students would share stories of challenges and how they navigated through them. The room felt charged with possibility, each voice giving rise to empathy
and understanding, turning shared experiences into powerful lessons. And at those moments, Mark realized he was no longer merely an instructor standing at the front of the classroom. He was a facilitator of change, guiding students to share their resilience and encouraging them to carve out their own paths to success. The community he fostered flourished beyond the walls of his classroom, sparking a school-wide initiative to explore emotional intelligence across disciplines. As the school year drew to a close, Mark stood before his students, filled with pride. Each one had grown, confronting their own fears, navigating the turmoil of adolescence, and emerging with solid characters built on acceptance and determination. Mark received recognition for his innovative approaches. He was invited to speak at district meetings, sharing insights and showcasing his students' transformations. Awards followed, not just in the form of trophies, but in the powerful stories of students who had discovered their own voices, voices that now echoed through the school halls, resonating with strength and unity. In those final moments of clarity, Mark looked around at the faces of his transformed students and felt a deep satisfaction ebbing within him. He was recognized not only as an educator, but as a catalyst for growth, a guiding hand in their journey towards self-discovery. He had conquered not just the doubts surrounding his teaching methods, but a broader understanding of his path in life. With solid confidence and an established position, Mark embraced the future, realizing he was as much a student as his pupils, both navigating the complexities of life and learning to rise together. Now is the moment for you to step into your own journey of growth. You need to subscribe now to our channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and ensure others can discover this transformative narrative. Comment your reactions and theories about the powerful ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this compelling conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share the life-changing insights of personal overcoming that could ignite their journeys.